Gargoyles, Griffins, and glistening Glamour, the winding, dazzling circus parades. Stately Greek goddesses and Roman gladiators perched arrogantly on their golden thrones to review Chicago city slickers and Iowa farm boys alike. For decades of American history, they wound their way through cities and towns like magic serpents, hypnotizing wide-eyed spectators into following their Pied Piper calliope tales. Surrounded by the sounds and smells of mysterious beasts, the great wagons of the circus parade rolled on rain or shine. Even darkness couldn't stop them as they lit the night with calcium lights and red and green flares. By the turn of the century, as many as 30 circuses sported parades traveling the nation. They could take an hour to watch and might stretch out for more than a mile. The circus parade, in fact, became nearly as important as the circus itself. Potential customers began to judge the quality of a circus by the size of the parade. During the golden age of circus parades from the 1870s through the 1920s, these magnificent displays carved a nostalgic notch into history. And a golden age it was. The route book of an 1892 Ringling Brothers Street Parade describes the exotic glamour that made the parade such a fond memory for so many people. The pageant was, according to the book, a winding, dazzling river of silver and gold. The parade wagons were described as new chariots, gorgeous with gilded lion and serpent, or carved with dolphins and dragons and griffins and hippogriffins. There were tableau cars, four-squared with Grecian gods and goddesses, or illuminated with golden seahorses, winged leopards, mermaids, and fabulous figures. Floats were adorned with medallioned, mythical faces and emblazonry of heroic saints, Peruvian sun gods, centaurs, moon men, golden calves, and Chinese dragon day glories. African wild beasts, elephants, camels, ponies, clowns, and all the rest added to the spectacle as the brass bands filled the air with music. With all of these sights, sounds, and smells streaming down Main Street, who could resist standing out in the hot sun to take in the mile of gleam, gold, glint, and glistening glamour? That glistening glamour would outshine everything around it. On a September morning in Lebanon, Tennessee, for example, the Gil Robinson Street Parade came marching into town with its horns playing and its lions roaring. A murder trial was in progress in the Lebanon courthouse. As the parade hit town and more jurors, witnesses, and lawyers strained their eyes and ears to catch the sights and sounds of the spectacle, the judge finally gave in to the magnetic charm of the parade. "It's no use, gentlemen," he relented. "This court can't compete with a circus. The case stands adjourned until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning." Although the street parade grew to become a golden piece of American entertainment history, in its infancy it was actually more of a quick advertisement than entertainment. In the late 18th century, equestrian circus troupes would wear colorful clothes and plumed hats as they marched through the streets. Trumpeters would sometimes ride horseback to attract the attention of the bystanders. By 1825, the circuses began to stop outside of a town where the circus was going to play and wash off the horses and wagons. The drivers would then put on fancy red clothes and hang banners on their wagon, while a small band would climb aboard one of the wagons as they headed into town. Little by little, the parade was beginning to develop into entertainment in and of itself. In 1837, the Purdy Welch Macomber Circus brought the parade a step closer to the fabulous spectacle it was destined to become. On the 1st of May in Albany, New York, a woodwind band mounted horses while two drummers climbed aboard elephants and headed into town. This is often viewed as the first real circus parade. By the 1850s, the parade was often a separate performance. Rather than simply marching into town, the circus performers would move directly to the showgrounds, set up their tents, and then parade later in the day. The wagons were already becoming an important part of the parade. Not only were they needed to carry the equipment, but many of the circus owners were beginning to have wagons designed strictly for use in parades. The wagons were decorated with wooden carvings and scenic paintings. As the carvings became more ornate and the paintings more detailed, the larger shows began to compete for the most outstanding wagons. As beautiful as the wagons were, the romance and glitter of the circus life shined a little less brightly as the circuses trudged across country from one little town to the next. They would usually set up by about 3 in the morning in order to arrive in time for the next stop. The caravan slowly creaked its way over the rough roads, piercing the dark of night with glittering lanterns and torches. Not only did the natural obstacles make the journey rough, but more than once the tired troop from a caravan would stand dismally looking across a deep stream after a rival circus had burned the bridge they needed to cross. There are also tragic stories of old wooden bridges that gave way between the weight of the huge circus wagons, sending people, animals, and equipment into swift currents and deep waters. The wagons were built large and heavy so they could stand up to the tortures of the ruts and potholes of the early roads. They couldn't be too huge, however, or the poor straining horses couldn't even pull them. Then near the middle of the century, nearly all the size restrictions for the wagons were taken away. In 1856, the Spaulding and Rogers Circus tried a bold experiment. They moved the entire circus by railroad. This was not the easiest project to undertake, since many of the early railroads used different gauges of tracks. When one train would reach a junction point with another railroad that used a larger or smaller gauge track, the entire circus would have to be unloaded and reloaded onto another train. Talking about the tremendous effort involved, one circus owner said, "You cannot possibly imagine the amount of labor involved. I never took the clothes off my back from the time of loading until we reached Philadelphia, our 7th stop." Hard work or not, the circuses continued to use the rails. Since the wagons could now sit high atop the railroad car gliding over steel rails rather than clunking along through potholes and muddy trails, they could grow much larger. In some cases, they were nearly 30 feet long. The golden age of the parades and their magnificent wagons was right around the corner. For the next 50 years, snarling lions and tigers, spangled ladies on horseback, and golden-clad masterpieces rolled past hundreds of thousands of cheering fans. Unfortunately, as the 1920s rolled around, the cities had grown larger and the circus lots were no longer located in the middle of town. The performers would often have to ride 5 or 10 miles just to get downtown and back. They could not give as good a performance after the exhaustive trek. This and other concerns like increased traffic brought the end to the circus parade in the 20s and 30s. But the great wagons, the sights and sounds, and the dreams will never stop. They continue to roll on through America's cities and towns in hundreds of thousands of childhood memories.